Hello and welcome to the Farming Today podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, much of England is officially in drought. What does that mean for farmers? Let's start though with cases of the cattle and sheep disease bluetongue, which are on the rise. There have been 24 in the UK since the beginning of the month, the majority in the southwest of England and 3 in Wales. Scotland and Northern Ireland haven't had any cases. The disease is spread by midges and can have a devastating impact on livestock, from spontaneous abortions to birth defects and death. 2 years ago, cattle on Joe Warren's farm in Suffolk were infected.
When we scanned our cows, we noticed we had a lot of cows empty. We put 97 to the bull that year and we had 19 empty, which is rather high for us. Then we had a calf born early, an abortion I suppose. Got the vet out to do an autopsy, and then we found out that calf had no brain at all. And then at the end of it, we ended up with 9 aborted, 5 dead calves, and 2 of these what they call dummy calves, where the dummy calves can't even follow the mother. We had an autopsy done on one calf, and that only found out it had 10 to 15% of its normal brain. So when a calf was being born, they looked normal, but they just went away and died. And that is how strange this bluetongue variant is. You never know how it's going to affect your herd.
What impact did it have on you and on the farm?
At the time of calving, obviously you dread going in and seeing what's lying in the yard. You didn't know if you can find another one aborted, another one died or whatever. So yes, that do have an impact on you. When we come to sell the calves we had, in altogether, we're 33 calves short of what we should have had, which is near enough a third of the calves less.
Now, this year you vaccinated.
Yeah, we vaccinated. As soon as we knew we had the bluetongue, we vaccinated the cows pre-bulling, so we knew everything was protected. And this year, we didn't see any signs of bluetongue at all. For the cost of it, that's £2.50 a dose. Well, if a calf is worth £1,200, £1,300, why wouldn't you spend £2.50?
Joe Warren there in Suffolk. Well, as I say, most of this year's cases so far are in Devon and Cornwall. Today's Launceston show in Cornwall will go ahead without cattle and sheep in a bid to reduce the spread of infection. Dr Simon Gubbins is a bluetongue expert at the Pirbright Institute.
Certainly this year and last year, the cases that have first appeared have been a result of kind of essentially overwintering of the virus in the livestock population in Great Britain. So cattle and sheep infected in one season, it's then transmitted to the fetuses, and then when they're born, then they get fed on by midges, and sort of the cycle begins again.
Has the weather played a part here? Because we had a mild, wet spring and obviously this very hot summer.
I think almost certainly it has. So in terms of midge numbers, we're not actually seeing a big difference from previous years. But what the temperatures have changed is how long it takes a midge to become infectious. And because the temperatures have been so much higher than normal over the past month or so, this means we're seeing a much faster replication of the virus within the midges. It's unprecedented. What I've seen is normally we'd expect it to be 2 to 3 weeks for this to happen, but over much of England and Wales over the past sort of few months, it's been 1 to 2 weeks. So it's been much, much faster. And this, I think, is contributing a lot to why we're seeing this kind of increase in cases now.
There is a vaccine available. Are just not enough people using it?
The uptake, as far as we know, has been relatively low. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure why. It certainly reduced the level of clinical disease and should also reduce transmission.
There are different variants of this disease, and you can vaccinate against one of them, but not all of them all at the same time. So is that a bit of a worry?
Certainly, so far all the cases we've had have been bluetongue 3. Last year we did have some cases of bluetongue 8 in the southwest of England. So far we haven't seen sort of cases of that serotype yet. Hopefully, because there were relatively small numbers of cases last year, the chances of it overwintering are smaller.
Dr Simon Gubbins there. Today, the BBC's local radio stations in England are devoting the day to agriculture. And as part of this Farmwatch, the BBC has been looking at the price of food and how much of what we pay goes to farmers. Not surprisingly, given the weather, all this starts with a barbecue. According to the Consumer Price Index from May this year, families are paying 9% more for beef products, 2% more for bread rolls and 8% more for bagged salad. That's in comparison with 12 months ago. The BBC's East Yorkshire and Lincolnshire rural correspondent Lindsay Smith has been talking to farmers.
Barbecues hit the spot when eating out is beyond the budget. But now, even a home barbecue is becoming pricey. But those at the start of the food chain say the extra cash shoppers are paying doesn't end up in their pocket.
You come in.
Heather Oldfield is a cattle farmer near Boston and a mum of two.
All of our costs have gone up. Feed, labour costs, fuel costs, fertiliser costs when we're thinking about fertilising the grass that these guys eat. Come on, everybody, to come and have some dinner. Both girls want to farm, but it's quite difficult to work out how do we diversify, how do we shore the business up into a place that's right for them to come into without saddling them with a lot of debt.
It's not just beef that's on the rise. Flour is the main ingredient for bread buns. It's made in mills like this one in Yorkshire. Robert Archer is in charge.
We've increased our prices to cover the prices that we've had to incur. So our haulage has gone up nearly £400 a load. If we stayed at the same price, we'd be losing money and then we couldn't run the business. It's either you have to pay the price or you don't get your food.
From bagged to baked. This bakery produces thousands of loaves every week, which means energy-hungry ovens. Putting 10 to 20 pence on each product does not cover it. Phil Clayton owns the bakery with his wife.
And now I'm not going to be a millionaire running a bakery. My responsibility is to make sure all of this lot get paid as well, and a good salary, you know what I mean? So no, bakers are definitely not richer than they were 12 months ago.
And no burger is complete without salad grown in an energy-hungry greenhouse and transported around the country in refrigerated lorries. Here's Matt Brankley, who grows salad in East Yorkshire.
I do think that in the UK we do have relatively cheap food. I know that might sound like a shock, but if you go to some places over in Europe and the States, the cost of a simple lettuce could be $2.99. Whereas in the UK it's retailing anything like 80 pence to £1.
Lindsay Smith reporting. For more on Farmwatch, tune in to your local BBC radio station or search for it on BBC Sounds. Half of England is now officially in drought. The Environment Agency says it'll enhance its monitoring of water levels and, crucially for many farmers, step up controls on how much water can be taken from rivers and groundwater. 7 areas, from the West Midlands and East Anglia, through the Thames Valley and Hertfordshire to London, and down into Hampshire, the Isle of Wight and the South West, Dorset, Somerset, Wiltshire, South Gloucestershire, Devon and Cornwall are all in drought. The agency has put a further 7 areas into prolonged dry weather status. That's the step before drought, leaving only 16% of England with normal water levels. Well, in Wales, a drought was declared in much of the north of the country last week. Scotland doesn't declare drought, it monitors water scarcity. Some parts of eastern Scotland are in the most extreme category of significant scarcity, according to the Scottish Environment Protection Agency. In Northern Ireland, people are being urged to use less water. The president of the National Farmers Union, Tom Bradshaw, says the exceptionally dry and hot weather has meant a challenging time for farmers, with an early harvest and low yields for many crops, while the lack of grass in scorched fields means livestock farmers are already feeding their animals with food they'd planned to save for the winter. He warns that growers who need to irrigate crops like veg are getting to the end of their stored water and says our priorities need to change.
We've just taken food production for granted for far, far too long. We talk about energy security as a country. We talk about defence spending as a country. The third leg of that stool has to be the resilience of our food system. And we need to make sure we're prioritising it. We're seeing what's happening across France and into Spain with the extreme weather down there and the wildfires. We can't rely on other countries to produce our food. We need farmers investing today in things like reservoirs, in water systems around their fields, irrigation systems.
Tom Bradshaw from the NFU speaking there to BBC Farmwatch. The Environment Agency says around 1,400 businesses which take water from rivers or use groundwater have had to stop or reduce the amount they take, and that a sixth of England's rivers are now classed as exceptionally low for the time of year. Stuart Sampson is National Drought Manager at the Environment Agency.
We've declared drought across many parts of the country, and this has been due to the exceptionally low rainfall in July and at the end of June. There are quite a few rivers which are below normal for the time of year, but our groundwater levels across many parts of the country are holding up following the wet winter.
We've already seen about 1,400 farming businesses which use water largely from rivers who've had to either reduce or stop. Are you expecting to see more restrictions now on taking water from rivers?
Should the dry weather continue through August, river flows will decline, and those abstractors who have got licence conditions may find they will have to stop. It's linked to the weather going forward and how much rain will actually fall through August.
There are some concerns about animal welfare because of that. Is that taken into account?
Yes, so certainly animal welfare, everyone takes as a high priority. We would say to farmers, if they are struggling with their own supplies, they can reach out to water companies for help. They should also look at what alternative sources are available. There is a provision for emergency tankers and help if their own domestic supplies, if they're on, say, their own borehole or abstraction, they can look towards the local authority as well to help them out.
The Environment Agency is supporting calls for farmers to be able to build more reservoirs to store more water on farm. Can you foresee a time when actually taking water from rivers or using groundwater will actually be more restricted?
Through winters such as last year, with a very wet winter, we're looking to see when people can take those flows which are high enough, which mean that everybody, sort of the environment as well as farmers can take water in a sustainable way and then store that water for use during the summer. Recently, we've just published our Water Resources National Framework, and again, we're supporting farmers on new reservoirs and looking at the local resource, and we're trialling it with a number of farmers and abstractor groups across the country at the moment.
And how does that work? What difference can it make?
It means that groups of farmers or abstractors can come together. They can look at potentially, if it's building new reservoirs, a considerable amount of investment, but they also need to ensure that the water is there, they can take it, they can fill those reservoirs. With water abstractor groups working more collaboratively, we can ensure, there is further resilience to droughts such as we're seeing now in the future.
We've heard calls again this morning for farming to be a higher priority for water when supplies are scarce. Is that likely to happen, that given what we're going through, we're going to have to redraw our priorities?
Certainly at the moment, our abstraction licensing system allows that fair access to water for everyone, and going forward, that management of how licences are used, and both locally and on a regional basis, is certainly there to develop a better position going forward.
Stuart Sampson from the Environment Agency. That's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Rebecca Rooney, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.